What is up, college lacrosse fans? You are watching yet another week of the LaxFactor College Lacrosse Weekend Recap. It's a really long name. We got to do something about that. Ton of games to watch. We've got Duke, Notre Dame. We've got Virginia, UNC. We've got Michigan and Maryland. We've got Ivy League battles. You name it, we've got it. So let's get into it. Before I do, be sure to like and subscribe. Those are the two main things you can do to support the channel. If you like this video, it will perform better. Also, be sure to hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when we put new videos out. And the last thing you can do to support us, it's the best thing you can do to support us, buy a t-shirt. Go to LaxFactor.com. Buy a t-shirt. They're cheap. It's cool. We've got a bunch of t-shirts. We got the LaxFactor t-shirts and others up there that you can purchase to support our efforts here. And let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this. First game I want to talk about. We have 8-3 Duke doing battle against 5-3 Notre Dame. Notre Dame needed this win badly, not just because they're 5-3 and they can't afford to be 5-4, but because ACC is brutal and they've all got battles left to go here. Duke didn't need it quite as badly, except they were sitting at 0-2 in the ACC, so they needed to get an ACC win. Notre Dame just needed a win, period, and in the end, they didn't get it. Duke pulls this one out 14-8. Nakai Montgomery is one of the big stories in this game. The kid has developed. He finished the season strong last year. He started the season out slow, I felt, this year, and he had a huge breakout game. Only one goal, but 4 assists, and it was done in a way that it was just incredible, and it showed his evolution as a player. He fed the backside. I dare say this was game planned, and that there was something in the way that Notre Dame was sliding that Duke was better prepared for than Notre Dame was prepared to counter it in the end, because Duke was just picking Notre Dame apart on the backside. It was incredible. Like, it was incredible that Notre Dame would half slide to say Montgomery. And then Montgomery, 3 steps, boom, he's hitting somebody on the backside. So, huge game for him. Joe Robertson and Brad Smith, usual suspects, 3 goals, 2 dishes each. Turner Upgren played solid in cage, 9 saves for Duke. Connor Morin was one of the bright spots for Notre Dame. He goes for 4 goals and 2 helpers. And freshman goalie John Zullo, 13 saves for Notre Dame, so he was another bright spot. Those are the only 2 bright spots, by the way, for Notre Dame. They looked rough. Duke controlled this game. Pretty much starting in the third quarter, they started pulling away, and even though Notre Dame chipped back in to make it 14-8 and look semi-respectable, it really wasn't. Notre Dame has a brutal stretch to finish off here. They've got Marquette, Cornell, and UNC to finish off. So they got one more ACC game, but they've got Cornell and Marquette. Marquette, I think they're 6-4 after yesterday, so they're no slouches. So Notre Dame could not afford to lose this game, because if they finish 1-2, to finish this out, they're okay. They're at 500. They got the ACC tournament, and they'll be able to make the tournament as an at-large bid. If they finish 1-2 over this stretch, then they need to win 2 games in the ACC tournament to get into the tournament, and that's going to be tough. The loss to Richmond is what's really hurting Notre Dame. Granted, Richmond's a good team, so I'm not saying that Richmond shouldn't have beat them. I'm just saying for Notre Dame, that was one of those games you put on your schedule that you expect to win. They didn't win that game, and instead of sitting at 6-3 after a loss to Duke, they're sitting at 5-4 with this loss to Duke, and it's a brutal final stretch of 3 games for them to get through. UVA and Marquette is who Duke is facing. So Duke's fine, 9-3, even if they drop those last 2 games, 9-5 with the ACC tournament. They're happy. They're not going to drop those last 2 games. They have a good chance of splitting them, let's be honest. Marquette, even though they're capable of beating them, they're probably not going to. UVA, that is a toss-up. That's a pick-em game. So excellent game out of both teams, though, and Notre Dame needs to handle their business coming into the last 3 weeks of the season. Next up, Virginia. North Carolina. North Carolina comes into Charlottesville to play Virginia, and Virginia comes away in a battle 11-10. And honestly, North Carolina, I felt like, played the better game throughout. It was sitting at 1 goal. UVA was up a goal going into the 4th. North Carolina scores. They take the lead. I think North Carolina ended up with a 2-goal lead at one point early in the 4th quarter, and then Matt Moore and Michael Kraus, they each, Moore scores 2 unassisted goals over a 2.5-minute period, and Kraus scored 1 unassisted goal to flip that from a 2-goal deficit to a 1-goal Virginia lead. North Carolina, I think it was Timmy Kelly scored to tie it back up again. And then my man, Dox Aitken, he scored the first goal of the game. And Dox Aitken scores the final goal of the game to get the win for UVA at home. So UVA, to finish off, they still got Cuse and Notre Dame left. Or UNC, I'm sorry, UNC to finish off. They still have Cuse and Notre Dame left, so that's tough for UNC. But like I said, UNC's problem in previous years had been not taking care of business in the beginning of the season when they were playing their non-conference schedule. This year, they handled their non-conference schedule, so they're sitting at 7-4 with 2 ACC games left, and then possibly the ACC tournament sitting after that. So they're okay. They're sitting pretty. We're looking at a year where all 4 ACC teams could potentially get into the tournament as long as none of them, just completely tanks towards the end of the season. Michael Kraus was a freaking monster on the day. He goes for 5 goals and a dish. Matt Moore, quieter, 2 goals and a helper, but his goals were important in the fourth quarter. Both of those goals coming unassisted in the fourth quarter. They were huge. Dox Aitken, just 2 goals. He's quiet, but he scores the first goal of the game, and he scores the game winner. So they will take that. Dox Aitken is an incredible midfielder. Alex Rode played tough, 14 saves. Nicky Solomon has looked really good all season for Carolina. Looked good again, 3 goals. Timmy Kelly, 2 goals. And Caton Johnson, Carolina's new young goalie, he came up with 12 saves, so he was solid throughout as well. It was a hell of a game, but UNC now, or Virginia now, sitting at 9-2. They are looking tight. They're looking tight. And North Carolina at 7-4. They're also looking pretty good. The ACC, I pray for any team that has to play any of these ACC teams in the tournament. Although I'm, also having to pray for the ACC teams because there are a lot of real good teams waiting to put up a stinker on the ACC, waiting to play the spoiler, I guess I should say. Another excellent game this weekend was Cornell-Harvard. Cornell struggled, but Cornell struggled last year early as well, and it seems that they may be, after that tough loss to Penn, it seems like they may be regrouping now and getting their shit together. Cornell now sitting at 7-3 after beating Harvard 19-11. Harvard drops to 5-5. There is no easy out in the Ivy, and Harvard, one of those, one of the lower teams in the Ivy right now, still a really tough team to play. Cornell, they led 4-3 at the end of the first quarter, so Harvard was hanging tough. Then Jeff Teat came into play. Teat scored 3 goals in the second quarter. He busts a hat trick in the second to help boost Cornell to an 8-4 halftime advantage, and from there, they rolled. I think Harvard got within 2 or 3 a couple of times, but Cornell would just answer right back and keep boosting that lead. Teat finishes the game with a monster 5 goals, 3 assists. Clark Pedersen, 5 goals, 2 assists. Piatelli, 2 and 4. So Cornell, their attackers were just lighting it up. Chase Erlin looked solid in cage. Again, 14 saves on the day. Miles Ham and Kyle Anderson both go for 3 goals and a helper for Harvard in the loss. And Harvard, to finish off their stretch, they can still get 3 quality wins. This is the weird part about teams that play in these really tough conferences is Harvard's sitting at 5-5. Not looking too good to get into the NCAA tournament. I'll tell you this, if Harvard can go 3-0 to finish this season off and they beat Penn, Princeton, and Yale, now all of a sudden their shot isn't so bad and they've got the Ivy League tournament to play still. Cornell, really tough stretch. Sitting at 7-3 right now, they've still got Syracuse, Notre Dame, Brown, and Princeton. So 2 tough Ivy League battles for them, and Syracuse and Notre Dame in that mix there. Syracuse is actually this coming up Tuesday. So huge game, quick turnaround for both teams. Actually, no, quick turnaround for Cornell because Syracuse didn't play this weekend. Loyola and Lehigh both sitting at the top of their conference. Loyola coming into this 7-2, and Lehigh coming into it 7-3. So both teams sitting pretty. Both teams want this win so they can prove they are the tops in their league, and Pat Spencer had himself another day. I had shot a video that I never launched where I said that I didn't think Pat Spencer was going to be able to put up another 8 to 10 points. I said he wasn't going to be able to put up another 10 points, but that he'd probably put up 6 or 8. He ends up putting up 11 points, 5 goals, 6 helpers on the day. He was crazy, and he did a lot of that early. Chase Scanlon has just continued his quest at being a first-team All-American as a very young man. He goes for 3 goals. Aiden Olmstead looked good off ball, 3 goals. He had a good feed from Spencer where he kind of, continued his cut underneath his man and scored. So his developments looked excellent as well. Stover, 15 saves. Jacob Stover has quietly put together one of the best seasons of a goaltender for any goaltender in Division I. He had 15 saves on the day. It wasn't close. It ends up being 15-9, and it looks like it might have been respectable. It wasn't. It was 9-0 at one point in the first half that Loyola was beating these guys. I think it was the first half. And Lehigh, they made it look respectable in the end, but that was after Loyola, gave up a quick 2 or 3. I think it ended up being 10-2 at halftime. So they just let them chip away a little bit as they got subs in and took their foot off the gas a little bit. Loyola, not looking good coming into the end of the season in terms of the toughness of their schedule. They have 3 8-win teams to face leading into the end of the season. They have to play Georgetown, they have to play Boston U, and they have to play Army. And then their fourth game to finish the year is against Lafayette, which they're under 500, but they're a solid team as well. So that is a brutal stretch for Loyola. But at 8-2, that's okay. Even if they go 2-1 or 1-2, they're still tournament bound, and they still have their own conference tournament to handle after. Lehigh, they've got 3 cupcakes to play, and then Holy Cross to finish off with. So both of these teams have 4 games left. Both of them are going to finish above 500, and both of them are going to be primed for their conference tournament come the end of the year. Hopkins and Rutgers doing battle. Hopkins sitting at 5-4, and Rutgers coming into this one at 6-4. So both teams in the Big Ten need this win. Both teams need this win to keep any chance of making the tournament alive for themselves. And Hopkins comes away with the 15-13 win. It was a good battle. Hopkins actually jumped out to a 6-0 lead. So even though, once again, this looked tight, 15-13 as the final, it wasn't quite as close as it looked. They jump out to a 6-0 lead, let Rutgers score a couple, and then it went back and forth until Rutgers started chipping away at the end, and Hopkins held on for the win. Darby, he was key in Hopkins going up 6-0. Darby made a bunch of early saves to keep Hopkins' hopes at spreading this open and getting themselves a comfortable lead. That was all Darby in the beginning. Well, not all Darby, but a mix of Darby and Hopkins handling their business on offense. It was homecoming, and of all the people to trash on Rutgers during homecoming, ends up being Joey Epstein, the freshman. 5 goals, 3 assists. He's starting to make his argument as being one of the best and most solid week by week players in the country. Not just one of Hopkins' best players, but one of the best teams in the Big Ten, or one of the best players in the Big Ten, and one of the best players in the country. 5-3. Cole Williams, 3-2. Kyle Marr, 2 goals. Kyle Prouty at the faceoff X goes 21 of 30, so that goes a long way in getting Hopkins this 1-goal victory. Gallagher and Charlambides. Gallagher, 4 goals and a helper. Charlambides, 3 goals and a dish, so they both look good for Rutgers. Hopkins, to finish off the season now, once again, I wanted to cover who these teams finished up with leading into the end of the season, because a lot of these really good teams at the top, they have brutal schedules moving forward. Hopkins, sitting right now at 6-4, they've got to finish the season against Ohio State, Penn State, and Maryland. They have to fight tooth and nail to A, stay above 500, and B, just continue to get quality wins, so that as long as they're above 500, even if they don't win their conference tournament, they're going to get a look at making the tournament, because it's tough this year. It's not the year where Hopkins can go 8-7 and just make the tournament because their strength of schedule. There are a lot of teams that will be sitting on the bubble that will have good arguments in terms of quality wins, maybe a bad loss here and there. So Hopkins needs to win at least 2 of these final 3 games, and that is going to be tough with Penn State and Maryland being 2 of them, and then Ohio State's not a slouch either. Rutgers, it's no easier for them. Maryland, Michigan, and Penn State. So the Big Ten is a brutal conference. You can make the argument it's the best conference in the country. I think that the ACC would have something to say about that in the end, but either way, it is brutal, and it's going to be tough for both of these teams down the stretch to be able to win enough games to make sure they're feeling comfortable going into Selection Sunday. I think it's Selection Sunday for lacrosse as well. Another game of import was High Point and Air Force. High Point coming into it at 8-2, Air Force coming into it at 7-3. So this was a huge battle for both of these teams. High Point comes out, they get the win, 13-9. By the way, they come up, they're winning 4-2 at the half. They use a 5-2 second quarter to separate themselves from the pack here. Asher Nolting had a monster day. Once again, continued on his quest to be a first-team All-American. He goes for 3 goals and 6 helpers on the day. Ben Baker, who's also been a huge part of this High Point success, he's good for 3 goals. And my boy, Tim Troutner Jr., 11 saves. He looks solid in cage. High Point, to finish off the season, Mercer, Bellarmine, they should win both of those games. And then Richmond, and Richmond is tough. So they got to finish the season a conference game against Richmond, who I believe is right now winning their Southern Conference in terms of just conference wins. So High Point has to win those two games, Mercer and Bellarmine, so that they can head into Richmond and have a shot at evening this out and winning their conference in the regular season. They could be 11-2 heading into that game against Richmond, and I will go into who Richmond has. I don't think I'm going to actually cover who Richmond has next, but Air Force, they have Richmond up next, and then two winnable games against VMI and Bellarmine. Air Force could help High Point a lot by beating Richmond here next weekend. So it'll be interesting to see. High Point now at 9-2. Nobody saw that coming. I thought High Point was going to be good coming into the season. I did not think they were going to be 9-2 good. Honestly, at this point, I figured they'd be 7-4 good because I figured they would lose that game to Virginia and Duke. But 9-2 good is looking tight for High Point. Air Force 7-4 though. Just another military academy that is doing excellent. We get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and now we are going into Maryland and Michigan. Maryland, 16-11 winners over Michigan. Now Maryland's sitting at 9-2, so they are having a really good time playing the sport of lacrosse right now. Logan Wisnauskas, he has 5 goals and 3 assists, as did his teammate Jared Bernhardt. They both go for 8 points on the day. Dubik, 2-0. Snyder, 1-2. Alex Buckanavage, kid, even in losses, the kid just continues to impress me. Michigan does not look like a team whose record is 3-7 while you watch them play. And Kevin Mack, 2-2, Buckanavage, 3-1. Buckanavage is a sniper. This kid, he's got a tight release. He keeps his stick right in the pocket. He's throwing passes across the field with the stick barely leaving his ear. He's sniping corners, well guarded, playing off like these little pick slip 2-man games where he's almost playing hide and seek behind his defenders. So watch out for Buckanavage, man. This guy, I think he's only a sophomore. This kid can play lacrosse. Gunnar Garn was terrible in cage for Michigan. 9 saves versus Danny Dolan's 14 saves. He looked good with 14 saves against just 12 goals against. So Maryland continues to roll. And like we said, they're sitting pretty right now at the top of the not at the top of the Big Ten, but I believe they're second place of the Big Ten. And games left here, they've got Rutgers, Ohio State, and Hopkins. So everybody in the Big Ten is going to have it tough to finish off here. But Maryland at least sitting at 9-2 right now. They're that only Big Ten loss is to Penn State. So finishing the last 3 out is going to be tough for them, but they're looking okay. Another one that was interesting was Boston University sitting at 7-4 coming into this game against Army, who was sitting at 8-2 coming into this game. I actually figured Army was going to pull this one out, but the Snipers from Boston University handled their business. They win the game 15-13. They improved to 8-4. Army is now 8-3. 2 of the teams here that I mentioned that Loyola still has to play that have 8 wins or more, or 8 wins. So that was a really tough game. Jake Cates, 4 goals and 2 assists for Boston University. And then Timmy Lay and James Burr each put up hat tricks. Chris Gray, on his quest for Twarton consideration, he goes for 2 goals and 4 helpers. That kid is lights out. He's an incredible player, and it's been interesting to watch his evolution. Army is led by Brendan Nick Turn, 3 goals, 2 assists, and then they spread their scoring out down their roster. Jack McCorsley and AJ Barreto, neither of them had really good games, so it wasn't a battle of goalkeepers by any means in this one. But I wanted to cover that one, though, because these are 2 8-win teams that Loyola now has to turn around and face to finish their season off. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Fairfield, Towson. Wanted to hit Towson up just because I actually didn't know that this was a tough game. I pictured this being a tough win for Towson. They end up handling their business 14-7 to improve to 7-3 on the season. We got Luke Frommer and Brendan Sunday both go for 4 goals and a dish. And Tyler Canto looked strong in cage. He ends up with 15 saves on the day, so he needed a good bounce back game. He got it. So that was a good win for Towson. They handled their business well, way more than I thought they would against a 500 Fairfield, and now Fairfield drops to 5-6. Another one of the 8-win teams that Loyola still has to face, G-Town gets a win over 500 Providence. Providence drops to 5-6. Georgetown improves to 8-3 with the 17-15 win. Their usual suspects, Daniel Baccaro, 4 goals, 2 helpers. Jake Caraway, who's been incredible this season, 3 goals, 2 helpers. Dylan Watson, 3 goals. So they played excellent. Owen McElroy, 12 saves on the day versus 15 goals against. Once again, not a battle of the goalkeepers by any means. And a guy for Providence, Nick Hatzapapapapa, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this kid's freaking name. He goes for 5 goals and 3 assists, number 25 for Providence. Get a better name, man, because nobody wants to say that shit. Next one, Hofstra. 4-7, lowly Hofstra. 4-6 coming into this game, lowly Hofstra. They beat 7-3 UMass, 10-9 at home. Big game for Hofstra. Not that it matters for them, but to take down UMass, who's sitting here playing with legitimate tournament considerations coming into this one. So UMass loses a heartbreaker to Hofstra. Ryan Tierney messed around and went off for 6 goals and 2 helpers on the day. That ends up being the win. Hofstra goalkeeper Robert Casey, he ends up playing huge, 16 saves on the day. That's another huge factor in that win. UMass was quiet across the board. They get a semi-poor effort out of their goalie Scanone, and 10-9 loss is the result there. They dropped to 7-4, and they still have a couple of tough games to finish it out here. They've got to play Towson next week, Fairfield, and Delaware. So that's a really tough loss for UMass that they did not want to drop that one. They would have been much happier going into that final stretch at 8-3. Didn't happen, though. Another one, Ivy League battle. And this one was one I thought was going to be closer than this. 4-5 Brown hosting 5-3 Penn. And Penn comes in and kind of puts the hammer down a little bit and gets the 16-9 win. Adam Goldner had a crazy day, 6 goals and a helper. And Sam Handley, the dude who scored the game winner earlier in the week, he goes for 2 goals and 4 assists. Actually, it was last weekend. He goes for 2 goals and 4 assists on the day. Reed Junkin, big day, 15 saves. So that is huge in keeping Brown at bay. Brown's a legitimate lacrosse team, though. Just couldn't get it done. Phil Goss, he went for 14 saves. Didn't look terrible in cage. Penn was just too much for Brown. So Penn at 6-3, going down the stretch to finish their season off. They still have Harvard, Dartmouth, and Vermont. And Vermont, tough one. Harvard, always a tough one. And even Dartmouth isn't a guaranteed win. So Penn's got a decent stretch to finish off here with one more Ivy League battle against Harvard. But it's anyone's game. But the Ivy League has proved to be a brutal conference this season. And it's just been fun to watch these guys play. What do we got? Oh, another great one. Vermont frickin' playing Albany. And I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm going to take a guess here. Vermont hadn't beat Albany in 2,918 days. 2,000 plus days. I believe it was 2,900, almost 3,000 days. Vermont hadn't beat Albany. They host Albany on Saturday. They beat them 10-9. Now, this isn't your grandmother's Albany. This isn't the Albany from last year, the year before, or the year before that. This is an Albany that's struggling to find an identity without their former Tewaaraton candidate, Connor Fields. The kid was incredible. So Dehoga Nanakoka has struggled a little bit, and he's kind of dealing with coming off the bench now as a midfielder at times. So Albany, they're trying to figure it out. They're still a solid team, though. Vermont proved that they are right now serious-ass contenders in the America East with a 6-4 record after this win. 10-9. Excellent game. Thomas McCunvey, 3 goals for Vermont, and then Sal Laria, he goes for 2-2. Ben French, 1-2. French had a pretty sweet diving goal late in the game. Goalkeeper Nick Washuta, one of the best keepers in the country. He has 9 saves against the Great Danes. Dehoga, 2-1. Jacob Patterson, 2-1. Pedestrian game for those guys, but Albany drops to 4-6. Vermont improves to 6-4. Huge game in the America East Conference, and it was fairly entertaining to watch, albeit it wasn't the greatest telecast. I did enjoy the guys who did the announcing of the game, and if you watch the highlight video that we did for that Vermont-Albany game, if you make it all the way to the end, there's just a funny exchange where one of the color guy is talking about somebody running onto the field with no shirt on. It was kind of a funny thing because, I love the Homer announcers. People get mad when you have Homer announcers do games. I love listening to Homer announcers do games. There's nothing better to me. Another important game. We have 6-3 Denver hosting 6-4 Villanova. Huge conference battle to be waged here. And Villanova comes away with the road win 12-11, proving that they are tough. They are scrappers. That win against Yale isn't the only good win that they're going to end up with this season. So they beat Denver in Denver's home stadium Keegan Kahn, 3 goals and 2 assists. He was huge on the day. The big story in Cage, though, Will Vitone. I don't even know how to pronounce that. I guess I haven't seen Villanova play a whole lot here. He goes for 19 saves versus just 11 goals against. So he messed around and had a 63% save percentage, which was excellent to help Villanova improve to 7-4. Denver, Austin French, 2-1. Ethan Walker, 2-1. They spread it out. Ellis Geis, Jack Hanna. Somebody, please tell me that Jack Hanna is Jungle Jack Hanna's nephew, because his sister really loved her brother so much she named her kid after him. Or even better, is Jack Hanna Jungle Jack Hanna's kid? I am almost 100% sure that is not the case, but someone lie to me and tell me that is the case, because every time I hear his name, I just think of Jack Hanna bringing baby tigers onto the Tonight Show or some crap like that. They spread it out, though, so they're all right. Alex Reddy had a tough day. 5 saves against 12 goals against. So Villanova shot well, and Reddy was not ready for it. But excellent game, though, in the end. And Denver, 6-4, they finished the season up against St. John's, Providence, and Marquette. For them, that's tough. That's not easy. All of those teams are solid and capable of beating them where they have to. Villanova finishes the season against G-Town, St. John's, and Providence. Very similar schedules for them to finish off their seasons. So that is the recap. We have a huge game coming up on Tuesday, Syracuse hosting Cornell. So that is a huge rivalry, a huge upstate New York rivalry, and both teams just badly in need of quality wins, and neither of them want to eat another loss at this point. So Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, we have that game. And then I believe there's another game on Tuesday night. What is it? Is it Loyola? Loyola and somebody plays on CBS, I think. So either way, that's the end of the show here. I'm sorry for rambling. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified when we put out new videos. Go to LaxFactor.com. Maybe buy yourself a t-shirt, get some swag. And that is it, guys. Enjoy the game that's on today here, the Big Ten battle between, I think it's Ohio State and Penn State.